Welcome to Full Metal RPG. I'm Richie Buzzkill, and tonight I've got a Switchblade bottle opener and a bottle of beer because we're going to be drinking and talking role-playing games. And I want to introduce the crew. We'll start with Kayla. What's up, Kayla?
Hey, I'm back again.
Hey, look. Talented people are back. Hooray.
Wait, where? There are talented people?
Oh, and that's Paul. He's only my oldest friend. It's fine.
Salute.
And Nolan is also back.
I'm back. I'm drinking a Sentimental Gentleman.
I have got a Founder's Breakfast Stout at 7:30 in the evening. So the appropriate
That's
time.
later here.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are on the East Coast time. I'm on the Arizona time, which is the only appropriate time because it doesn't change. It's always the same. Everyone else is wrong.
That's because all the clocks melted.
That's right. They melted into lovely Dali paintings and then went into the Tampa Salvador Dali Museum.
Sure. It does appear to be in the desert.
Yes. Actually, that would be hilarious to recreate. But we're recording on our typical Saturday night role-playing session, but I don't think we kind of paused our campaigns for the December of winter, no regrets, all parties, but no one has parties. Everybody's just too tired to run December.
Now, how are you going to manage scheduling in December? Like around
It's
the holidays?
impossible.
Well, especially since we wrapped up Delta V, and like starting a new game in December is even worse, right?
Yeah, one shots. Well, actually, hilariously, I just started a new game, but I'll talk about that after. Because you mentioned Delta V, which is the game I just run. We just wrapped up, which is a little. I think a lot of people will go, wait, what about this description? Because I ran a space game using a 35-year-old system for an IP that just wrapped up, but not that IP. So. The Expanse, and I know I've talked about this on the show before, but Expanse is one of my favorite shows. I love the hard sci-fi with the aliens interjected, and so I tried to buy the Expanse RPG, and then I didn't really dig it too much. There's some interesting stuff to mine there, but I finally said, fuck it. I'm going to run it in first edition Weston Star Wars because I got that lovely anniversary edition that came out a couple years ago, And there's a running gag in our group about Weston Star Wars, Paul.
There is a running gag. It's been running for 20 years.
Yeah, there's somebody that is not here who continuously talks about how Weston Star Wars was the best Star Wars. And I think he's right, but also he should have run it by now.
Yeah, he can run it any time if it's the best game ever. Yeah,
Right.
Sure. I'm eagerly awaiting, much like I'm eagerly awaiting the someone to run Aliens that I purchased the book for.
We all know that's not going to happen. So
Apparently this is shots fired.
Yeah, we're just gonna fire shots at all our friends that are not here that should be here on a Saturday night. So, what up, Woodfin and Caster? Anyways.
So RBK, you didn't go quite back to the beginning there about Delta V. I seem to recall playing both Traveler and Microscope.
Oh God!
In preparation to run Delta V. So tell us about that.
So we had a false start. With Traveler, because I was like, Traveler being out about the same time as Star Wars. It has this hard science fiction legend. And then we made characters out of the main book from the original Traveler, and like
the original Traveler.
Original Traveler, and it was fun. I think, was it not fun to make characters?
None of us died during character creation,
which
was the main thing I knew could happen about Traveler.
It was close, though. There was definitely a lot of people that could have died, had they rolled one number higher.
That's true.
But after we made characters, I started trying to figure out how much a spaceship was, and I went, I closed the PDF with a fuck this. Then we played Microscope in order to set, and we did actually use the Microscope.
Yep, that
setup,
was great.
right?
Yep.
It's not a perfect way to set up the game because there was some like ambiguity, and we maybe needed to drill down on the closer to history, but it was more of an improv history game than a role-playing game, because we did a little tiny bit of role-playing, but it wasn't enough I feel like it was worth the time to even try.
Yeah, we got a pretty good timeline,
Yeah.
but only like only a tiny sliver of the timeline we laid out actually, appeared on screen, and almost none of the role-playing we did appeared on screen.
But
It was relevant to our game. Like, yeah.
I mean, the tiny slice of it, I don't know is necessarily a problem, because that gave RBK like stuff in the back of his head of like where he's coming from and where he's shooting towards once he goes to actually run the game. But I don't think I've ever heard of somebody actually playing Microsoft or anything other than world
Microscope.
Microscope, not Microsoft.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry. That must be, I just got my vaccine booster, so it must be kicking in.
You got that 5G kicking in?
The 5G's kicking in.
Yeah, it was, I liked it because it did give a backstory, and everybody kind of had this meta view of the backstory. But we mostly forgot about it. I really kind of tried to mirror. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry, burping. Sorry, Canada, because I know Canadians in particular, according to Happy Jacks, are particularly offended by burping on microphone.
They put cottage cheese on French fries. They don't get to be offended.
Fair enough. But I did use. We're just shooting. We're just shots fired, dumpster fire tonight. So like it's fine. But I did use one of the more detailed scenes is because I mirrored it at the end, because essentially the background was like the universe found stargates. Like it was more of a Stargate start, and that the humanity moved out amongst the stars, and then the stargates collapsed and didn't work anymore. And the system that this system happened to be one of the systems that continued going and was able to get through the filter that would be the war after this occurred, and the corporations that won the war. But of course, then they had to reinstate a civilian government and be cooperative with the military. So they had to kind of reform. It was a reformation, and it was the Douglas system, and the Douglas Corporation happened to be the most powerful corporation. We happen to have Thelonious Douglas as one of the player characters.
Yeah, I still can't decide whether Thelonious is a good guy or not. He's
well, that's the perfect corporate character. You cannot tell if they're a good guy or a bad guy. You played a perfectly correct.
Yeah.
And I was trying to use the more of a hard vector, hard science fiction, sci-fi setting, because everybody had to develop ships and kind of go around in a couple hundred years since the war, and kind of, get into that expanse space where they're expanding into the outer rim of their solar system. So,
yeah, we had decided that the founder of the Douglas Corporation was really into jazz. So like all the planets and like
planetoids and moons were all
Thelonious as one of his like distant, grandchildren.
Great grandchildren.
Right. All have these like jazz based names. Yeah.
Brubeck Station and Coltrane and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that was fun. I like that.
I like that.
So you guys, did I succeed in bringing you that kind of like hard science fiction feel to the game? This is me.
Yeah, I will say much more than any other hard sci-fi thing I've ever been involved with. Yes, of course, you're one of the only other people I know that's like into that kind of thing. So most everyone else is like into weird shit. Give me more aliens, give me more cool powers, right? Nobody wants to like die from doing 8 gravities worth of acceleration.
Well, I think that might be I didn't go too hard on you guys. Like I could have been. I mean, I did look up how long you could. Hilariously, I looked the session before. I looked up how long could you survive in space without a vac suit, and it turns out to be about 30 seconds, which is about 10 rounds in most role-playing games. 5 to 10 rounds depending on your so they happen to all go into happened to be a couple characters that end up in a vacuum of space. Like I don't know, I think that's fascinating to like try and deal with 0G and vacuum at the same time. So I find it like our good friends Ken and Robin, not our good friends but well known, they always say start with Earth. Well, to me, it's start with physics and move on. And I think you can have really fun times, even fantastical times, just starting with physics and then moving on. But so
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was, especially, I think you did a good job with the hard sci-fi. Like it was there, but it wasn't obnoxiously so, which I think is real easy. I think that's a real easy trap to fall into with those games.
Yeah, you can tell it wasn't too hard sci-fi because the lawyer like managed sci-fi.
Like I wasn't required to do math as a player to play it, which yeah.
That's always the problem, I think, with hard sci-fi geeks, is they're a little too in love with the math. It's like, you shouldn't have to know the math to be able to try and survive in that universe, because you live in a hard science fiction universe, hard science universe, and you don't know the math, but you know what you can when pain is too high, and you can kind of feel your way through it, right?
Yeah, and I've made that mistake before, right? Like Kayla will, I think it was her first role-playing game, will attest, like, I ran a dread scenario set in Los Alamos. Like,
yeah, no, I think
nuclear weapons, like, after World War II, and it's like, no, this has physics in here, and, like, people did not understand it, and I fucked it up. Like, I should have,
Yeah. I think your storyline was fine. I got put in a character that I should not have been the character. I'm like, I took 1 semester of physics in college. I did not do well in it. Let me bullshit as my first role-playing game. No, it didn't go well.
It went great. We're still playing RPGs, aren't you? Good, fine.
I took a pause for a couple years, but yes, it came back. It didn't scare me off entirely.
Yeah.
Also, I will say, in all of, however you want to call this group, but in all of my dealings with this group, that is the longest running sci-fi game that I think we've ever played. Because we have had this like shockingly glaring, like, blind spot in sci-fi games. We played fantasy, we've done like modern horror, we've done modern games, like, but for some reason, like we've never done a lot of like long, more than like 2 or 3 game run of anything sci-fi, hard or soft or in between.
Well, I think that's part of like one of the interesting weirdnesses in role playing, because it started with fantasy. Almost invariably, everybody is, the most popular thing is fantasy. Like you would think that the most popular thing, according to the box office of the United States or around the world, would be superheroes, right? Which is which is everything. It's science fiction, it's magic, it's all that fantasy, it's all that shit. But like, it's just for some reason, role playing is sort of stuck in this modality of fantasy, right? And a lot of people can see their way into modern, but like when you go into science fiction situations, it's like Star Trek. Like, you would think Star Trek would be an immensely popular role playing game, and there are a few, and I would like to try the Star Trek Adventures game. But it's also like playing in the military. It's like being in the military. It's like, well, are we a bunch of like running around, and we're just like co-equals, like we're all just playing lieutenants and we're all running around like in Memory Alpha, or are we like in a command structure? We're part of the, it becomes difficult because a lot of science fiction kind of gets tied up in this militarism, right? Or you get into science fantasy, and it's a different thing altogether, which is maybe even less popular than sci-fi. So
we even had a little bit of that in the Delta V campaign, right? Where Bill's character was the captain and owner of the ship, and Thelonious Douglas, my character, was the rich asshole that had funded the whole mission and was like going around, right? So like you get those kind of dual power structure kind of things,
which I think led to some interesting conversations, because it's like, well, Bill, here I'm paying you to do a thing. Do you want to do the thing? Bill being one of our other members of our Saturday Night crew who happened to play the captain of the ship, because of course it would be really expensive for the rich asshole who isn't that rich to own a starship and just like gallivant the universe, right? So
no, you lease, you don't own.
That would attach liability to it.
Yeah,
it's much better to like hire a subcontractor and allow them to assume the liability.
Right. If it rolls, floats, or blasts off from the surface of a planet, lease. Right. That's what rich assholes I hear say. So, but yeah, I mean, go ahead.
So what's interesting about that though, and I thought about this for a long time, of like, there's not really a difference between like sci-fi and fantasy, like, especially if you're not doing hard sci-fi. Like, I mean, the thing that I think demonstrates it best, and now I'm going to talk about something I don't really know anything about, is Warhammer 40K, right? Like, you've got like space orcs running around fighting,
Well, yes,
like
space dwarves, space orcs, space elves, space humans. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think the two genres are not that necessarily, I don't think they necessarily have to be that far apart. I mean, look at Star Wars. I mean, if you just put that all on one planet, instead of having them travel around space, they got on a ship and sailed to the desert planet. Oh, okay. Then they got on a ship and sailed to the little continent that's all one big city.
Star Wars also claims to be from a long time ago.
Right. Like it.
And I think you're absolutely right that, like, if you look at the early D&D shit, like Tecumel and a bunch of those other like historical things, like in the early days, it was like serious literary fiction and then genre shit. And like genre shit was like sci-fi, fantasy, any kind of crazy shit like you could think of, right? And like some of those early D&D things are like, and your D&D characters find a like spaceship that crashed 1,000 years ago. Like, there's some of those early D&D adventures that have that kind of weird quality you're talking about, and then like fantasy and sci-fi are just kind of all part of like weird fiction, right?
Well, yeah, that's sort of like the lines are blurred. I mean, I really classify Star Wars as science fantasy. Like, I don't classify it as science fiction. I know it's science fiction, but to me, the difference between, and we could do a whole show on science fiction versus fantasy and where the line is, but like, essentially, in science fiction, the rules are set and only technology can break the rules. In fantasy, the rules are set and only magic can break the rules. Like the difference is, academic, I think, at that point. But
I mean, you can do the same thing with Star Trek. I mean, Vulcans are elves. Like,
yeah.
Klingons are orcs. Like it, I mean.
Yeah, well, except for the fact that the Klingons were originally Russians, because it was all about, the Cold War, at least most of the time. But yes, effectively, you could translate the stereotype or the mold from one to the other back and forth. I mean,
right. It's the same set of tropes. It's just got a different window dressing to it.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to ask a random question, from our patron, Jacob Toki. How did gaming go this year? I mean, more games, less games? Do we run in person? Still online mostly? Like, what do we do?
Gaming was excessively busy for me this year. But
well, you were
happens
running a business.
When you make that, when you make that as part of your business, then it tends to be. But let's see. So I ran many, many, many more games than I have normally done. They have been both in person and online. So our group, of course, is online. And then I have in person. I have 2 campaigns that I play in. I had 4 campaigns that I just finished running. And then
is
in
that all
person,
D&D or did
the
therapy groups are all D&D?
Therapy groups are all D&D. So I just finished 4 homebrew campaigns with them, and then a couple of conventions. I got to run indie games, which was always a good time. And playing a whole bunch of different games that I've not tried before 2022, and probably several that we won't play again because there's just so many on our shelves.
Oh, you should introduce your animal you were petting as well.
Oh, yes.
This is going on YouTube, so some people will want
this
to know.
is Mayhem. She thinks she is the main character in everyone's story, so she has decided that she needs to be on my lap during this podcast, of course.
Okay, well, excellent. What about you, Nolan? What was your role playing this year?
I would say my role playing didn't get more or less, but it got less online. Like the pandemic receded and the live group started up again, and simultaneously people were like, I don't know if I want to like make every Saturday be about online gaming. Right. So I think all in all, it was probably a wash in terms of, amount of gaming, but it moved very much towards a more open world where we do real world gaming. I'm just rolling through our Roll20 here. Like our group alone, like Delta V, we just talked about. Paul's 5e game, the Traveler game. I see Cyborg on there.
Oh yes, yeah, we did run that Cyborg one shot.
We did Pirate Borg.
We did Pirate Borg on the thing. I think I don't know whether it counts as this year. Last year there was a Cyberpunk Red just at the end of last year, beginning of this year.
Well, we did. So hilariously, all the things that I ran, we ran for the show, except for Delta V.
Except for Delta V, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I see Garuda Lake Mysteries from Kayla, which is the Kids on Bikes thing we did. I ran some Inspectors. I ran a fuck ton of Brindlewood Bay. I think Astral Mists is technically a miss. I think that closed up before.
I think that closed out last year.
That closed out last year. I think that's technically a miss. So yeah, I mean that's just what I see on here. Going through my checklist of what I've done. Let's see here. think we did some Morkborg with the kind of communities that at least ran one of your Morkborg campaigns, Nudie. Or I think that was still this year. Or was that last year?
I think that was last year because
that may have been last year.
You're going too far back. Anyways.
Sorry. So new things I've run this year include Secrets of the Vibrant Isle. I ran A Good Society LARP for people, which is, Story Brewers, gaming, Jane Austen kind of thing. I played in Kids on Bikes from Kayla, as we said. Junior Braves of the Apocalypse, also Kayla in that. I played Ritsulka, which is a weird game about women drowned in mystic ponds granting wishes. Gen Con. I played Death is the Only Road Out of Town from Grant Howard and Alex Roberts as a psycho noir kind of kill simulator. You can see my penchant for noir in this list. I played Follow by Ben Robbins. I played Fedora Noir, which is another noir thing. Yeah. Fate, D6 Star Wars, Expanse thing, Delta V, Mouse Guard. Yeah. I've done a lot of gaming this year.
Yeah. Paul, did you do it? Do you have an outside group right now? I don't.
So briefly, so as the pandemic lightened up, I started to try to get my live group back together down here. It was lovely because I've got a couple people that I'd introduced to gaming, and one of them her husband decided to start playing with us. So it's like my second generation of new gamers that I've got. So I got Walenji, and then through her, I got Johanse. And I was starting to run them through, and this because I kind of let Johanse pick, and we were going to run through Curse of Strahd in 5e, and we got a couple games in. The problem is the problem that every live gaming group has is people have busy lives, and then getting enough players. And if you've ever tried to get through the meat grinder that is the introduction to Curse of Strahd with a 4-man party, imagine how hard it is with a 2-man party. That was not good. So it ended up dying on the vine basically because of scheduling. But we're working on getting that back together. But that was a wonderful experience. The other one that I did with that, and I think we may have talked about this on the show at one point, I tried something different with it, which was basically for session 0, I set up a fiasco game, or at least the beginning of a fiasco game, to determine how the players were related to each other. And it worked out really well. It was a fun little experiment that I did with the two of them. So I did that. I played in all of the SaltCon games. We have an episode about that, so I won't go through all those again. But that was a lot of fun. But I did not end up conventioning this year. I opted out of Gen Con from the beginning, and then at the last minute, I pulled out a BBC, Big Bad Con.
Yeah, you have to specify when you pull out the BBC.
I'll allow the listener to make their own interpretation of what that means.
It's not like Paul to pull out a BBC.
Got to push back into that, Dan. You got to push back into it. So yeah. So a little bit of a reemergence of live gaming between SaltCon and my live group, but we're still working on coming out of that. The Saturday night crew is my main RPG supply there.
Yeah, and for me, it's the only. I mean, I talk endlessly about what I'm doing because I'm on the show all the time, but the only thing I haven't talked about is I've started playing a Delta Green game. So we actually had session 0 of Delta Green game last week and session 1 today. and it's actually for those longtime listeners, it's Brendan Carrion GMing Delta Green, and it's Adam Sink, a good friend Adam Sink there, and then Michael Collette, who made some brief appearances on here, and then Mike Heiligman is somebody you may or may not heard mentioned back in the ancient days. And so we're playing Delta Green, and it's really interesting because we're like, none of us decided to be butt kicker characters. So like we have like 2 essentially computer scientists, an EPA inspector, and a media personality as our Delta Green
That
team.
seems good.
Yeah. So
like
go ahead.
Delta Green loves cops a little too much.
Yes, it does love cops a little too much, but we decided to not be cops, but we were part of the conspiracy, Delta Green conspiracy. So we're trying to figure it out. And this session was about trying to, like, somebody saw some shit and somehow went from Kenya to Louisiana somehow. Who can say? Probably on an alternate dimension somehow popped up. So we had to. I was told by my handler, and we haven't figured this out yet, and I can't be at the next game, so we'll see what happens. But I was told, like, he either needs to be closed-mouthed and turned over to the military, or he needs to be taken care of. And we're not killers, so we got him out of jail, and now we're in a motel on the Louisiana-Texas border. So, like, who can say what's going to happen? It's sort of like Chekhov's powder that's undetectable by toxicologists.
Chekhov's extrajudicial murder.
Right, exactly.
You're on the Louisiana-Texas border, so nothing good is going to happen.
That's right. Well, we were in Baton Rouge. That was where he was imprisoned. So we got him out of there. And now we got to figure out what that's going to be. So, but I think for me this year has been pretty good. I did have like a couple, like 2 games of Pathfinder 2 that I didn't really talk about because it was the Pathfinder 2 module where you're playing as circus folk. So I thought that was pretty interesting because I was promised L5R after that, but like we didn't get very far because the eternal demon spawn ultimate enemy schedule kind of killed it. But it was, I think it was a pretty good year. I mean, I had our friend convention. I had Arizona Game Fair, RIP. I had Big Bad Con. That was all like, some in-person stuff, but it wasn't a lot of in-person stuff. It was still mostly online games. So, but yeah, it was pretty good. So, okay. I got a question kind of from 2 people here, Michael Marines and Sadaka112. Are we looking forward to any RPGs coming up in the next year? Are we looking for anything new? Kayla.
Looking forward to anything new. So I'm going to say probably because I know that it's coming out, or at least going on Kickstarter next year sometime. The Realms of Kymoria, which I'm allowed to talk about now. They have fully released starting PAX Unplugged, but it is a like 5e plugin that is kind of geared towards the therapy realm. So I'm looking forward to that because I am looking forward to having more tools to use as a therapist and maybe not have to put so much time and energy into constructing the perfect therapy campaign. That would be super helpful. So that is one. I have a couple on my shelf that I like really want to try to get played next year. I just picked up Women Are Werewolves. So I want to try and play that because that looks really interesting. Trying to think if there's anything else that's like sitting on my shelf that I definitely want to try and get it. So, I have a couple of like duet RPGs that I want to read through. But yeah, I think that those are the primary things. But again, that's going to be more for the therapy realm. So like, how can I pull some more gaming into individual sessions even?
I mean, when they get closer to that, and I know that I've said, and people, that we're not here to promote Kickstarters, but when they get closer, I'd like to have another RPG Therapeutics episode and bring those people on. That doesn't have to be anytime soon.
Yeah, we can also add the Chimoria stuff to our list now that I know it's not NDA'd like we all played a playtest stuff.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I thought that was still non-disclosure, but
it is not. It got released on for PAX Unplugged. They premiered it and did a whole launch, so it is out in the wild now.
Yeah. If you could send me a link, I'll put it in the show notes. So,
will do.
Anyway, Nolan, are you looking forward to anything new next year?
I'm looking forward to new-ish things. I've probably only got one real new thing, but like I'm looking forward to getting some things to the table. So I would like to play and/or run Hearts of Wulin.
Ooh, nice.
That arrived this year, and I have not done it yet, and that is up my alley. So that's a thing that should happen. I also have a weird desire to go through some serious, like something with some big tread game energy, which is also not what you expect from me. I think we should all do some red markets. I think we should do some zombie apocalypse economic horror about how like the world has ended and zombies are everywhere and you still have to pay the rent, and god damn it, doesn't it suck that you still have to pay the rent? Well, zombies are trying to chew your fucking face off. Like
ultimate late stage capitalism.
Ultimate very late stage capitalism. Yes. I don't know why that game has caught my attention. Like I do love the things that like Caleb Stokes makes, but like weirdly, I like the weird like what I've seen of the actual plays of it, it has a weird like breaking point where it's like, oh, you're on the fence of your compound, like using a spear to like stab zombies, like that's basically free. And like then you get in the actual out doing your job trying to like collect treasure and so forth so you can live another day and feed your gun and like maintain your vehicle or whatever. And like just something little goes wrong and then it all starts to turn. I like that like aspect of it, of like everything was fine, we had everything under control, and then like no, you don't have it under control. So I have a weird desire to play that, even though it's not my usual kind of thing. I know just after the new year, Paul is planning to run Swords of the Serpentine, and I am hyped for that. I'll let him talk about that. And of the actual new things that will be released next year, or at least knock on wood will be released given Kickstarter schedules, I do kind of want everyone to come out here near me and play Old Gods of Appalachia out in the like backwoods of West Virginia outside DC.
Oh, that'd be like, so much fun.
In a camp, around a campfire.
Well, I have good news for you. If you count Kayla's house as the backwoods of Virginia, we may be being there.
Yeah, we can all like go out in like wilderness and like have a nice fall marshmallow roast and play Old Gods of Appalachia around the campfire. That seems good. I do love that like radio show podcast thing, so that would be good fun for me. Those are my like 4 items I had for next year.
Paul, are you looking forward to anything new?
I am. As Nolan said, it's not precisely new, but it's certainly new for us and new-ish is Swords of the Serpentine, coming soon to a Saturday online gaming group near you. I'm putting together something for the Saturday crew that I'm very hopeful for. I also, like, again, want to get the aforementioned live group back together and run either continue Curse of Strahd or something else, whatever they're interested in. The other aspiration I have is Tales of Equestria, because every pony loves Tales of Equestria.
What?
This is by no means a new
What?
game, but it is new to me. I do have a little show running around, and I think it would be a good gateway game, or introductory game for a young child. So I kind of want to run that for her. So that's one of my aspirations. She's super into it. There's been a couple times I've been in my office working, and she's come in and like pulled them off the book, and we'll just like kind of flip through them. I was like, yes, first one's free, child. First one's free.
Just hook it to my veins. Just hook it to my veins.
Exactly.
Yeah. When they asked this question, I was like, okay, I'll go look and see what's coming up if anything is on the schedule, and like I couldn't come up with anything that, like, the closest thing I could say that might be released next year, and who could say, I'm sure they will, but like, is the Blade Runner RPG. But like, I resisted the Kickstarter, and it's not what I mean. Like, I love Blade Runner, and even Blade Runner 2049 is really great, and but like, I just resist it. I don't know why I'm resisting. And maybe because it just, like, it's so perfect in my mind, it's hard to like imagine playing in the Blade Runner universe, and like, that sort of thing. But like, I think the real answer is it's probably a game I've never heard of that will be the game I'm looking forward the most of, because I want those new people, the diverse people, somebody to come up with something I've never heard of that I'm super excited about. I'm gonna keep trying to bring science fiction back to the Saturday Night Crew. Once we're finished with Swords of the Serpentine, like, run something else. Mothership 1E sounds like fun, but I'd like to just, I even get the Mothership I have on my shelf out and just play that. So trying to come up with what I'm looking forward to this next year is, like, to be honest, I don't know, because there's a lot of Kickstarters and a lot of other things that we just don't know yet. I mean, to me, that's the real answer.
But not to mention the tremendous, like, churn on itch of, like,
there's like 16
that
million
will be invented
games
that we haven't.
Yeah.
Well, or the world is on fire. Here's an itch.io bundle for like whatever support cause, and then you get like a bunch of really cool RPG stuff in there.
10,000 RPG games.
Yeah. Good luck sorting through them.
Yeah. Here's 500 RPG PDFs. Would you like to play any of them? Like, yes, I would. Do I have time? No.
Nolan and I have actually talked about this before, and I think he thinks I'm a little crazy about this, but like, when you have those like enormous humble bundles, like, it actually oddly turns me off when they get so big, because the idea of like sorting through it and like trying to give 5 seconds of attention to each of them becomes so like overwhelming to me that I just like don't want any part of it. I know that's strange, like, you've given me too much for my money, but it nevertheless.
Yeah, well, there's a point in which like eating sugar, like, you want sugar all the time, and they're like, oh, I'm done with sugar, and they keep eating sugar, and like, I'm feeling sick. Like, it's that sort of feeling that I get from itch. Like, I love stuff on itch, but like, I have to, like, I need to filter through it to find the things I'm really interested in, and then filter through that to stuff that I might really do something with. So like, there's a multiple levels of things. So
like, just to attack you here. Like, not attack you, attack like make
please.
a random like whatever. Like, do we
Come at
have
me,
a
bro.
role? Do we have a role in like recommending good shit from those bundles? Like,
Oh,
we're a
that's fair.
podcast. We have a voice.
I think
Like,
that's. I mean, I don't want to get into that yet. We'll get into that into the show here, but like the answer is yes. The answer is yes. We should be filtering through those things to help our audience find things that are cool. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show. Anyways,
This really is the shots fired episode of FMRPG.
whatever.
Look, I've got 3 holes in my head already, so like let's just keep going until like my head is just one big giant, like I just a neck, like magnificent beard and a neck.
I realized that I have one other thing that is sitting on my shelf, literally in my office, that I have like been looking at and need to make time for at some point, is to read through the Girl Genius RPG that got released this year. Because I think mainly because I want to see if it would be cool to run for like girls in like a like girl empowerment group, but also because I liked the comics a bit. So
yeah, no, that would be
I
great.
love those comics.
Nice hat.
I like GURPS less, but I love those comics.
Are you coming up to make an appearance?
I mean,
Taco would like to say hi. Hello, Taco.
Paul is holding up his chihuahua named Taco.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean,
Fun
like,
fact: Chihuahuas were originally bred for meat, so Taco's descendants were in fact tacos.
Okay. But this sort of feeds into literally feeds into
Ancestors, not descendants.
God damn
His
it.
descendants will not be tacos, I assure you.
Right. Any thoughts on future live plays? Like we did the Morkborg last year, and we did Pyroborg this year. And they're asking like Cyborg or Death in Space or The Expanse, and I'm like, and this is Sardaukar continuing. I think it has to strike the right chord for us to like do it, like, or when we want to do it, that becomes something we want to do on air. But I'm up for whatever. It's not our it's not our brand, except for when it was. Anyways, anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I agree. Like, actual plays on this thing are sometimes food on this channel seem to be like a sometimes food, right? Like, I think they're good, but we don't, that's not our brand. We're not voice actors, we're not comedians, we're not the experts at that kind of thing, like making it super entertaining for people who are just like, I want to hear a good story. I think we have a certain role to play when we say, okay, we're going to play this game through, and we're like not unentertaining players, but we can have a view on like how the rules worked out in play, how, what they say about, role-playing technology and role-playing as part of society. Like, I think those things are good, right? Like, I think we have a role to play there. I think, but, like RBK says, like, unless it lines up with our interests and, and the audience's interest, like, it's not something we do all the time here on this channel. It's not what this channel's known for, right?
Right. And like the Pyroborg thing came along because like I'm friends with Luke, the creator, through some Patreon activities, but like, and I wanted something fun for Halloween. So like, it was like it lined up. Or like, like there's all kinds of games we could be playing. Like I would, if you have like some deep desires to hear us play some like Vampire the Masquerade or something, point a game at us and like say, hey, this would be really cool to hear you guys play. Like I'm for it, but it's just got to be the right fit. And I want to me, having conversation, because there's plenty of people that are doing these actual plays that are a lot of fun, but I think that there's like we're like it has to intersect with what we're doing, which is like having interesting conversations, or just an interesting game comes along. So like red markets might be a good answer to that, actually. So
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, I don't consume actual plays as a rule. Like, it's just not my thing. I'm not saying there's anything bad about them, or, anyone, you know, no judgment of anyone who does. They're just not my thing.
No kink shaming. No kink shaming.
So it's frankly not something I think about doing a lot. I mean, I would say if there's a demand to listen to us sit around and, digress for 40 minutes of an hour and then role play for the other 20 minutes, like who are we to tell the people no? But I think that's part of why I don't think about it. And then, I'm not particularly opposed to it, but that's my thought on it.
I mean, I would like to record that Girl Genius game you're going to run, Kayla, personally. I think that would be a fascinating thing to see people play, because I know how important that comic is. And it's something that I think people would be interested in. It sort of aligns with the idea of what we do here, but like, it doesn't have to be that, but it's not necessarily us, but it's just, that's what I was thinking. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I like, unlike Paul, I don't usually watch the live plays unless I am looking for something specifically, like need to know how to like it's a better way for me to learn how to run rules for games sometimes. So, or at least see how other people are using them. So I like having them in existence, because that kind of gives me some source material on, oh, okay, it's handled this way, or, oh, okay, that's a way I could handle it if this situation comes up. So I do appreciate the people that are putting that content out, very much so. And I have picked up a couple just for funsies. But yeah, no, I'm usually down to try out new things. I've definitely this year has been stepping out of my comfort zone in that quite a bit, with playing some games that I was like, always like, nah, nope, I'm good. And then trying them out and actually really enjoying them. So I'm trying to have more of an open mind towards things, especially as we go into 2023.
Yeah, I want to wholeheartedly agree with Kayla there. Like, watching an actual play or anything like that to learn the rules of a game, like games used to be like transmitted orally, like where no one would understand how to play D&D or whatever until you like went over your friend's house and like saw it played, and they're like, oh, I get it now. But, like, now we have this whole YouTube and podcast actual play like culture that like really helps spread that like secret knowledge of what it is to have these like conversations about like, hey, this is what the world's going on in the world. What do you do? And then get the answer back. And then like, that whole thing is like not intuitive to people, and it's hard to write down in a book. But like actual plays and that kind of thing have really opened that up. And like Kayla's absolutely right. If you want to learn the rules for a game without like reading a giant trad book, like an actual play is a fantastic way. And like I do it myself too when I'm trying to get ready to prep a game I haven't run before.
Yeah, boiling things down. I mean, if I'm learning something, I'll usually like read the book and like write myself like single line notes of what that is. But yeah, I mean, I can see certainly watching somebody else play and then using and writing down like, okay, this is how this works, is a perfectly fine way of doing it as well. But yeah, I that's not generally how I do it, but like board games is probably closer. If I'm going to run a board game, like I'm probably going to watch it. This is how it's played instead of reading the manual, because man, those manuals on board games are terrible. Anyways, one more question from Sardaukar 112. Planning to attend any cons? What cons are we planning to attend? Well, What about you, Paul? Are you planning on attending any cons this year?
Well, I'll be attending SaltCon. I can't remember what the proper number is, but Dan will give you the wrong
Oh,
number.
gods.
We're not
So
going
I'll
to fight
be-
about this on the air.
No, we're not.
No, not on the air. But one day it will spread, and there will be holy war about what number the SaltCon is. So I will definitely be going to SaltCon. I would like to go to either Big Bad Con or Gen Con. I'm frankly leaning towards Big Bad Con at this point, just because it's smaller, and from the report that I got back from you all, it seems like a good time. Um, so I definitely want to go to both SaltCon and, a more public con at some point this year.
And for the benefit of the listeners, SaltCon is our local friend group con where we all.
Yep.
It's almost like it's Full Metal RPG Con at this point, because it's really just us, the people that are on this, and a couple more people. So, like,
As I say, there's people that haven't been on the show.
that's true. That's true. Only because they're shy. But that's
Yet they haven't been on the show yet,
right. But essentially it's our little, like, our friend group, our Saturday night crew, plus a few others that show up and play in person.
we have there's an episode about it.
Yeah.
A couple back.
See editor's note, see, like, something from last April. Nolan, are you going to anything?
I mean, I think it's most likely I'm doing Gen Con and SaltCon this year. Just because I have family in Indiana, and Gen Con is just wildly convenient in that regard, that I get to, do a trip to see family combined with a con trip, you know. I have very much considered Big Bad Con. I may do that instead if the group is doing Big Bad Con. And also this year I've noticed that I'm within striking distance of PAX Unplug, and I expect Kayla will tell us more about that in a moment. But that may be something I dip up to for a day or so, just to like scope it out and see how that is. But no, I don't have big con plans for next year, but those are my general thoughts.
Kayla?
Well, I will definitely be at SaltCon. Being the host this year.
Right.
And then I will be at Gen Con for a couple of days. I'm hoping to go for their vendor day again this year and get to do, like, maybe even put together a talk for that, because I found it pretty interesting. The probably I did enjoy Big Bad Con. I'll have to see, like, what my crazy schedule looks like, though. And then PAX Unplugged was nice to just, like, run up to for a day. I suspect that with kind of like my collaboration with Geek Therapeutics, I'll probably be attending more cons next year. Like, this was kind of a con heavy year for me. And I'll probably be at more next year as well, just because business stuff.
Fair enough. For me, I'd definitely be at SaltCon, but, like, I definitely think it's been so long since I've been to Gen Con. I really want to go to Gen Con next year. And depending on the COVID policy at Big Bad Con, I might be back. I really had a lot of fun, but I really don't want to wear a mask that long again, because it was really taxing. But I get it. I do. I really do. But I'm just gonna chance it. At this point, we're this far in, but I'll probably go to maybe one or two local conventions, since Arizona Game Fair, rest in peace, is gone. But I don't know. We'll see. But that's I would like to maybe go to OrcaCon or one of the LA cons at some point because there's a lot of cool people I know that go to those. So we'll see. I don't know if I have time.
If there's no Arizona Game Fair, that gives breathing space for RBK Con.
Right. Which would be interesting. Your imagination is better than the joke I was going to make. Anyways. Yeah, so that's conventions are, I would like to go and play now that I'm not running anything. I'd like to play more, and I had a good time this year. I actually had one day off at Arizona Game Fair, and I roped my wife into playing a game with Alan Barr. So that was a lot of fun.
So that's actually a question that I will throw to you and Kayla. What is it? How would you compare and contrast like being at a convention as a guest versus somebody either running the con or like working the con?
I think the thing that is always, it's like this weight when you're running something or working a booth or running a convention. There's this like, yeah, you can go play a thing, but there's always this like, at least for me, there's always this thing in the back of my mind that's like, oh, I should be like, I need to get back to this thing that I'm responsible for. That's always my problem with doing things at these. And this year I happened to have somebody like helping me things, so I was able to like, do enough ahead of time that like they took care of the thing I was running for a day while my wife and I played some things. So, but I still ended up working that day a little bit. So I don't know about you, Kayla, but that sort of was my experience.
Yeah, I actually went up to PAX Unplugged just to work, basically. I knew I was going to be meeting up with some of my colleagues that I haven't actually met in person through Geek Therapeutics, so that was pretty exciting. But I found that like because of my business now and like because I attend like the vendor stuff, I'm definitely much more like social with many more people than I think I used to be at conventions, where it was kind of like just mix up with the friend group or whatever, and then like say hello to the fellow players and play our game and move on. Now I'm like much more likely to talk with lots and lots of people and find out what they do and find out like more about them. Like I know that that's what at the Geek Therapeutics booth that I was working, I was definitely having many more conversations. And then afterwards I convinced Tyler to just walk the vendor hall so that I could go around and actually found a couple of booths to like talk with people that are kind of in the same space that I am. I found a booth that was just on like volunteering at hospitals and playing video games with kiddos, and like different video games that are useful to kiddos. So I was like, oh, that's up my alley. Let me go coordinate with them. And found an artist who is like working on trying to make an RPG. He's not ready for Kickstarter yet, but like for the younger kiddos. And so I was talking with him a bit because that would obviously be a very good thing for me to know about, because some of these games are really complicated, especially for the younger kids. And so if we can get like a more simplified version that's easier, then that might be something where I can kind of expand to a little bit younger of clients, which I know that there's a demand for, like just from the parents reaching out. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like I don't have anything for you right now. I don't have games that I can run for your kiddos. And yeah, so I think that's the main difference. Yeah, I know, but so my problem, Paul, is that I have never been super into My Little Pony. And I don't know if it's just because of the age that I grew up in or what, but like I missed My Little Pony.
Now, I'm going to say this as a 40-year-old man. My Little Pony and the Magic of Friendship is an excellent television show. They are not a sponsor of Full Metal RPG, to the shock of no one, but it is a wonderful show and it is very well written.
Yeah, I haven't checked that one out, Dan. He's holding up Golden Sky Stories. But I do have Little Wizards on my bookshelf that I need to read through as well. So there's options. I just haven't dug through them very much. And also because like I'm already insanely busy with groups anyways. Like I feel like four campaigns is a lot to manage in a 12-week time period. So yeah, I haven't had a ton of time to dig into that, but
for D&D games.
yes. Yes, 4 D&D games, and then I play in 2 D&D games. It was very confusing times there for a while.
And well, I will addendum that when you're heading a podcast, there's always this like demand on trying to hustle. Like, at least that's in my head. Like, I got to be like hustling at all times if I'm at a convention. Like when I was Big Bad Con, like I had a pocket full of Full Metal RPG dice. I was like handing out as like my calling card to try and like get people interested in the convention or in the podcast, or be like, hey, if you got something interesting to talk about, like let me know. Like here's some dice, right? That's sort of, the working relationship with the convention is a very interesting one. But one more question. I think the patrons are the best. Let me just take a break here before I ask this last question, which is a bit heavy, but like as I asked the question, hey, what do you have any questions for us to like talk about while we're drinking and or talking about bullshitting about games? And they're like bringing it, and then like it gets into like Kickstarter fatigue, and they just go off on their own amazing conversation. So like if you want to be a patron and be part of these amazing conversations when it happens, talking about Kickstarter bubbles and behind the curtain stuff with some publishers and some cool stuff that happens kind of in our patron chat. But it's just one of those things where like, it's like, oh, well, I guess the questions are done. Now we're going to talk about something else. And we're going to just leave you guys behind and talk about something else amazing. But like the question from Mr. Sink, the illustrious and alumni Mr. Adam Sink, is the RPG industry in a waning phase? As it feels like last year there were RPGs coming out every edge case property, and now it feels like market has become saturated and people are worn out. Did Kickstarter factor into this? And also, when are we playing West End Star Wars, which I should get at him about.
I don't know, Woodfin. When are we playing West End Star Wars?
That is kind of funny that he was asking about that. So, but
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
Are we waxing or waning as an industry?
Sure. I don't think it's in decline, but I think it's like I have no. Okay, first we're gonna have the preamble hut where I say I am not a fucking expert here, right? Like there's so many people in the
no
Discord.
One on this call is an expert on the industry. P.S.
Right. Yeah. Like I don't publish anything, so giant boulder of salt. Take it with this. But I feel like it's not in decline, but it's definitely like kind of necessary leveling off after the COVID boom. Like between the skyrocketing demand for games over lockdown, like either people were playing games online or they were kind of like imagining they were going to run games, like and just buying the kickstarting the games hoping to get that imaginative joy of like closet drama, sitting there reading their game books thinking, oh, this will be such a great experience once the lockdown's over. There's just such a boom of this kind of thing over the pandemic. And that was combined kind of with crazy supply chain nonsense of the inability to actually print games, get them and ship games, right? Getting them to people. Like it was too hot and, it had to come down at some point, So I don't think it's necessarily a bust per se, like big crash, but I think it needs to level off and maybe dip a bit. Like it just seems like the forces involved there are necessary. I also noticed Alan in the Discord, who actually does have way more experience and knowledge than me, saying that he thought the marketing of RPGs and like trying to get attention to your new RPG was just like way oversaturated also. And I'm not an expert, as I said, but that feels right to me also. Like that there's a lot of demands to like, look at my new Kickstarter thing, and it's like, I'm done with that, you know.
Well, it's sort of the implosion of social media that has sort of like made marketing, and I feel like the part of the Kickstarter was all about FOMO that like was built a little bit on the social media, but like with, to me, social media kind of imploding, like I don't go on Facebook anymore. I don't feel this like need that I need to keep up with Facebook. Twitter, I read it, but I don't feel sometimes, but I don't feel like I'm like getting into this FOMO circle with Twitter.
Yeah, it's time to get out of that dumpster fire too.
Sure. I get it. But like, whatever. Anyways, but like Instagram is not like this, like, oh, people are like really talking to each other anymore on Instagram. They're just like posting pictures and not getting much response. Like, and like, it seems like the FOMO machine is broken down. Like, that's why the marketing game has changed and it's sort of splintered. And you've gotten kind of back into the days where like, and I hope this is the case where like things can just happen and you're like, holy shit, that's a thing now? Like, that would be great. That I would love that, to like not know that there's like an amazing RPG that just shows up on the shelf, or like I remember like, oh, that's a thing. Like, to be surprised is something that we were lacking for the last decade. Basically, it was like there was no surprise. Like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Okay, we're good. So
Yeah, I feel like the whole Kickstarter thing has been like drinking from a fire hose, right? Like there's just so much stuff, and I still feel like I am drinking from a fire hose in many aspects, because I feel like there's so many games coming out anyways that I don't even know about. And again, I have no idea of the industry. I can just like from a personal experience tell you that I just feel like there's just a ton of stuff coming out, and so it would have to slow down a lot, I think, before I would really fully notice that we're slowing down. Just because like I'm sure if I could go on Kickstarter right now, I'll find a whole bunch of crap that I could spend a lot of time looking at. But I have also been a little burnt out on the Kickstarter thing, so
yeah, there was a lot of people that were or at least specifically Patrick was expressing like some Kickstarter fatigue, and I feel that like that. I feel that as well. Like I used to check Kickstarter every day for some new stuff, and Full Metal RPG at the time back in the day was like, oh shit! Every time a new episode would drop, it'd be like a new Kickstarter that I had to immediately back. Like, and there are some things like that I immediately find, but like it's. Like compared to those halcyon days of like 2015, like we are like way lower on projects that I really want to back anymore. So like, it's like I've got this huge shelf of things I haven't played and I want to play. It's like, that's part of like what I'm looking forward to in 2016 or 2023. God, what?
The 2016 wasn't the best year. Maybe
Look,
not go back to that one.
Yeah, I'm on my third beer, so let's just.
I was going to say, of all the years to go back to, I do not think 2016 would be the one I would pick.
Well, that's the year our Delta Green game is going on in, so things are going to get weird. Anyways, yeah. So I just wanted. I feel like we're kind of at the end of the show here, and I wanted to say a couple things. This is the end of season 4. Season 5 is going to be a lot more of more faces than my stupid face are going to be on here. And that means that all the people that are on here, Paul and Kayla and Nolan, are going to be more often, and they're going to bring their own specialties to this. This is the kind of soft launch of season 5, and maybe we're going to be talking about some new branding some new things going to happen in the new year. But I'm hoping to bring everybody along that likes what I've been doing in the last year. It's been a hard year for me, and I really appreciate the support of everyone that has come along on this weird uphill, downhill, my emotional swings in being involved journey. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate all of you, especially the patrons, but I appreciate anybody that listens to this. If you have some notes, hit me up at fullmetalrpg biz at gmail.com. I'll put the link, email link in the show notes. But is anybody got anything else they'd like to say before we put a bow on this and finish our beers? Okay.
Happy New Year, happy holidays.
Yes.
Hail Satan. Like
Hail Krampus, hail Satan, hail New Year, happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, happy any holiday you want to bring in. So
hopefully happy 2023, filled with lots and lots of new games and lots of fun.
Yes. So,
absolutely. So stay out there, keep playing, and hope we all have a game-tastic 2023.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much. Rah.